Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on the start of this new week, Monday, April 24th, 2023. It is about 11:14 a.m. here along the West Coast in the state of California. Latest earthquake activity is a 3.6 somewhere on this cluttered globe. Also 1.5 up into the Alaska region. Definitely seen a broad area of earthquake activity ramping up across the Java Trench and the Indonesia area. We'll check out that activity here in just a little bit, but first want to bring up the space weather event that triggered a whole bunch of auroras last night. A severe G4 class geomagnetic storm sparked auroras over Europe, China, and most of the United States, including my area here where I live in Northern California, just outside of Chico. Looks like the lowest it went here, as far as the visible auroras, was down into the San Diego area. Pretty crazy to think that even down in Southern California they picked up the auroras. You had to be, of course, away from the city lights up into the mountains, and probably for this image here from the spaceweather.com site, they used a probably a longer duration exposure to bring out more light, which amplified the auroras. But either way, pretty cool. Some auroras across Arizona. I've seen them all over the place, folks. I went out here after my update last night and tried to get it, but I'm just not 100% certain. I did see a little redness in some of my images, but it was hard to tell because I do have some lights within the vicinity of the house here. So, but either way, hopefully you got a chance to get out there and look at that, because it doesn't happen too often. If we're lucky, we'll see it again, right? Right now, a much different story. We're looking at some calmer conditions here across the aurora forecast. Very minimal at best. Hardly anything showing up across the higher latitudes. And last night's event was sparked from a filament eruption that kicked off here a couple days ago. It was from an Earth-facing sunspot. Sparked off filament eruption and a massive CME, and that hit us pretty much dead on with the path here of that full halo CME. So that's kind of, one of the main reasons why it was pretty amplified last night. But also at the same time, we're looking at the BZ component of the interplanetary magnetic field well south, pointing to the south. Here they mentioned the component sharply south and moderate conditions. That was yesterday. When that happens, that allows this solar wind to flow in, so to speak, and amplify these conditions that we've seen for the G4 last night. They weren't really forecasting that. They were only forecasting a G2 class storm. So definitely was surprising, but things, they kind of play out on occasion. If things are set up right, we definitely see those auroras down into some of the unusual areas that we normally don't see them, just like Arizona and seen Oklahoma, northern Texas, of course San Diego down there. Pretty crazy. All right, so what do we got? Anything else going on? Are we expecting any more? Not at the moment. We would need some type of CME or some type of prominence eruption to get another similar event. Right now, looks pretty calm. We do have numerous sunspots here across the sun on the Earth-facing side, but pretty much all of these are fairly stable, and they're degrading very rapidly. It looks like this regional sunspot over here, southeastern limb of the sun, is about the only one of concern. I'm not seeing any major areas further out on the eastern limb of the sun. 75% chance for a C flare, M flare at 25% chance, X flare at 1. Things are relatively calm there across the current solar flare detection chart. And of course, the auroras have come to an end completely. But we'll continue to provide updates. We do have a coronal hole here. This is another way we can get some elevated geomagnetic storming, but it's not a big one. This coronal hole right here facing the Earth, directly squared with the Earth, on the Earth-Sun plane. Perfect time for a train to drive by. And And so we'll see if this kind of amplifies the conditions here over the next few days, but nothing, it's probably not going to be anything like what we've seen here last night. It would take a, similar event. Those don't happen too often. All right, earthquake activity, what do we got? Well, a little bit of movement here kicking up across the globe and the flat scale model Earth. Following yesterday's 7.1 in the Kermadec Trench. Down here, we have seen a little bit of aftershock activity and also some movement down south into the New Zealand area. We'll get to that here in just a second. But definitely things kicking up south into New Zealand, and we're still seeing a fairly good forward momentum here of pressure around the Java Trench. Nothing large yet, but we are watching it. Here on the Earthquake 3D globe, you can see some of the newer activity here in the whiter color rings around Papua New Guinea. A little swarm of activity here, and also that momentum around the plate boundary making itself known across the Java Trench. Continue to watch that area for some potential larger scale movement. Philippines area did see some activity as well. Looks like into the Philippine Trench 5.0. The latest, that popped off there about 2 o'clock in the morning. The latest one's going to be a 4.5, a little bit further deeper into the area of the Philippine Trench. Up here along the Izu Trench area, one earthquake from yesterday, 5.2. Nothing showing up here again across the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench and the Japan Trench. Things very quiet in this area of the Pacific Plate. Let's go back to New Zealand down here. It's kind of covered up in the mix of all these rings from the earthquake activity yesterday. Going to go ahead and check out the GeoNet servers here. Wrong one. GeoNet, there we go. Let's see what we got. Looks like 3.44 hours ago. Couple threes showing up here on the map. The all magnitudes map here will give us a better indicator of some of the smaller quakes taking place. Quite a few deleted events there over the last hour. Not for sure what's going on with that. There's a 5.0 a little bit further north on the Kermadec Trench. Of course, that will show up here as well. Let me check out the earthquake drums here for New Zealand. There's the goodness. There's the 7-pointer from yesterday, making a quite a signal on all of these seismograph stations, except for a couple of them. But that's a pretty powerful earthquake. See here, I'm looking at local seismic activity here. Aside from that 3, maybe that was about it. As far as uptick goes, there's really not, there's not a whole lot being reported. But I still think there's a good probability and possibility to watch this area for some further movement. It's been working its way down here. Been kind of watching this. I can't use the word unzip, but kind of migrating southward here over the past couple weeks. And New Zealand eventually here is going to make a little bit of adjustment. It just doesn't look like there's too much activity here kicking up as of late, aside from that 3-pointer that was coming in. Nothing major going on. Let me check out the volcanic field drums. See if we got any activity showing up here across New Zealand. Look at this. This is up here into the region of the Kermadec Trench. So that's why it's going to show these earthquakes, right? USGS, EMSC reporting a few aftershocks in here, but it looks like there's a lot more aftershock activity occurring around that 7.1 from yesterday. Here's the 7.1. Quite a few 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s in there as well. That's why the graph looks like that. Now, looks as though this may have stirred up the Taupo supervolcano. This is all local seismic activity, right? Is this supervolcano here? That is Taupo supervolcano. And it looks as though there's all this local seismic activity here kicking up. Let me bring this up here again. Let's see what we got across the area of Taupo supervolcano. Looks like there's some swarming going on here. Notice that latest one, a 3.3, and a bunch of other smaller quakes here located at the southern end of the Lake Taupo area. And as you can see here on this graph, definitely showing a little bit of seismic elevated uptick following yesterday's 7.0, which just barely showed up here on this graph. But this is all local seismic activity there on the North Island, New Zealand, situated and located around the Taupo supervolcano, because a lot of this activity is not showing up anywhere else, unless you're a really close station here. But yeah, that looks like that's the little bit of uptick there. All right, we'll continue to watch that. Nothing major, but definitely slight uptick compared to the past couple months or so. All volcanoes across the area remain the same here across the west coast, all normal. Kilauea volcano doesn't look like there's any update here in the bulletins, but we will double check that, see if there's a latest update here put out yesterday. It looks like Kilauea volcano there on the Big Island is not erupting. We have not seen any lava since March 7th, 2023. No significant changes across the area currently. Tilt meter was inflationary over the past 24 hours with a gain of approximately 1. Doesn't look like there's been too much elevated activity here across the Kilauea region. Some minor earthquake activity here over the last 24 hours, and most of that is actually from yesterday, but again, continuing to watch that. A little bit of activity uptick here across Mauna Loa. Some smaller quakes, it looks like. Some of these are fairly deep, about 39 kilometers below the summit of the Mauna Loa area. Continue to watch that as well. All right, moving here across the Alaska area, we've got a little smaller earthquake activity from yesterday. Actually, all three of these are from today, early this morning, it looks like. 4.8, and then a little bit of deeper movement following that surface earthquake activity. So continue to watch this area for some movement possibly. West Coast area, Seattle, a little bit of movement across the Mount Rainier area in Washington. Very small microquake activity. And we got one earthquake near Longview, 2.2, 17 kilometers deep. Let me check out the tremor here from last night. I know we checked it out, but just double checking here. 633 epicenters positioned here at the northern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. All right, Northern California. Still seeing, well, let's see, is this from yesterday or today? All these from yesterday. Did have a little slight uptick here across the Bay region with some very small earthquakes. But since looks like it's died down pretty fairly nicely. Southern California, not a whole lot going on. A couple small earthquakes. In fact, looks like a typical day out here in the California region. No major uptick that I can see across the map for now. Up into the Yellowstone area. A couple smaller quakes around the area. Let me check out the Yellowstone overview. There's a 7-pointer from yesterday along the Kermadec Trench. Yes, even showing up here in the Wyoming area at Yellowstone. So that tells me right there that the seismograph stations are working properly. Doesn't look like there's any seismograph activity here as far as local earthquake activity at Yellowstone for now. Rest of the country out here, fairly quiet. One earthquake out here in New York. Actually, there's kind of looks like there's a swarm of earthquake activity. Most of this from yesterday. Looks like mostly some ones near Adams, New York. I kind of want to do a little quick catalog search here. We're going to go... Let's go 4.5 and above, specifically in this area. There's probably not going to be a lot, but I do want to see the potential out there. Out in New York, here where, let's see, which area was that? Let me double check here. That's right next to Lake Ontario. Okay. So right up here. Let's just draw a little. There's some mountain ranges right up there as well, just to the east. All right, let's see what we have as far as historical data goes. I'm just doing a 4.5 search. Wow. Looks like there was, back in 1853, within the vicinity of this, there's Waterton area, Adams. Well, just to the south of this current swarm, looks like there was a 4.5 back in 1853. Nothing since then, so it looks like activity can pick up out there a little bit. Look at the U.S. hazard map here. Of course, they got the mountain ranges over here. There's going to be fault potential. But that 4.5 struck over here just southeast of Waterton area, New York. So kind of watching this region, seeing if we're going to maybe see some further larger movement than what we're seeing right now. Like I say, it's kind of unusual to see a swarm of ones up here into this area. It's not in a major seismic zone, but history tells us that there has been some earthquake activity out here, and a little bit larger than ones. So just kind of keep an eye on that area. All right, let's see what else we have. Rest of the country, pretty quiet, folks. Caribbean plate, we got one earthquake here off the coast of Venezuela, 4.6, coming in early this morning. It looks like about 6 o'clock or so. Almost 100 kilometers deep. Just inside this plate boundary here. South America, a couple smaller earthquakes down south. Let me check out the earthquake 3D globe and see what we have. Not a whole lot throughout the South America region, a couple twos, but I'm more concerned with the Caribbean plate, seeing that activity ramping up all along the sides of it, including a little bit of activity here along the Middle America Trench of 4.2. That earthquake not showing up here along the Middle America Trench on the USGS map. Looks like we did have a little further activity into the Atlantic last night. 4.8 north of the Ascension Island area. It's been awfully quiet out here recently. Kind of triggered a little bit yesterday with a couple fives down into the South Sandwich Trench area. Relatively shallow earthquake for this one, but we did have a little deeper movement here across the area. And then, of course, looks like sometime later we've seen low activity out here. Right, let's see, what else is there? I think that's about it, folks. Just stay safe. You know, kind of an odd deal yesterday to, I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but, you know, that G4 storm hitting us, and all of a sudden we see a pretty large earthquake. Most of the time, even underneath some strong solar events, the earthquake relation to solar activity, it comes out to about 50-50. Sometimes there are big quakes, sometimes there's not. Yesterday there was one. Definitely need to keep a tally of earthquake uptick compared to lack of activity in relation to solar storm events. You know, I'm sure it's got to have some effect with the Earth being hammered by a strong CME, right? You think it would have some type of effect on the magnetic structure amongst the planet and the plates. All right, let's see what else we have for weather today. There's not a whole lot of severe weather threat. If you are down into Florida, there's a slight chance of severe weather with only a 2% chance of tornado activity. Most of this looks like it's just going to be some hail and some wind probabilities there across the West Palm Beach, Florida area and local vicinities within Florida. Aside from that, tomorrow a little bit of activity into Texas, it looks like, but no major setup. And a look at the West Coast. Want to check out the West Coast weather? We're going to be cooking here in the mid and upper 90s this week. Today's only supposed to be about 84, and then we're going to turn up the oven. Long range forecast here for the West Coast. I'm looking for rain or any type of major system here. That's kind of that's around the first week of May. Looks like we got a low pressure system wanting to build over the West Coast, bring some showers, along with a potential low off the coast. Ooh, Texas going to get hit pretty good down here towards the second week of May. Again, this is far out. It's hard to trust these models because they change. Pretty much only accurate up to a couple days. So a week or so is not super accurate, but it does tend to give a trend, and it looks as though something's wanting to build out here along the West Coast with a low pressure system bringing in some rain. And a bunch of rain over in Texas as well, looks like. Alrighty. Have a good one, folks. I'm going to jump off here and look at some more aurora photos here on the social media platforms. There's quite a bit. We'll continue to watch the earthquake activity here today. Hope everyone stays safe, and if you got any awesome aurora photos from last night, feel free to send them to me at the earthmastermail@gmail.com is my email address, earthmastermail@gmail.com. Let me know where you're at, maybe what kind of camera setup you used, and of course your name, and we'll give credit to you for using it here on the channel. But look forward to any images there that you guys may send. Take care. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on tonight. Have a good one.